the name of his game. With a coffee in one hand and his puppy on his lap, cigarettes curling, smoking his political trap. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. He's a Republican dragon with his truthful slight, fights the battles unseen in the shadows of the night. From policy to passion, he breaks it all down, giving a voice to the voiceless, wearing his crown. Caffeine-fueled mornings, the smoke curls dance, Puppy at his feet, giving life one more chance. Through algorithms and bias, he cuts straight and clear. Michael's roar echoes in the hemisphere. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough. No sound bites allowed is his ultimate creed. A dragon's perspective where facts are the seed. Standing tall on his battlefield of thoughts, guarding the truth that others forgot. Michael Vass roars through the screen, he flies, painting red and blue skies with his fiery cry. He's the world's watchdog, calling out the bluff. Right-wing swagger, but his heart's pretty tough.
Good evening and hello everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon here in our offices in the Bronx, New York. Today is December 17th and it's currently 7:32 in the evening. Thank you, each and every one of you, for taking a little bit of time to be here with me. We got a few things to talk about. I mean, it's the middle of the week. We're about, 2 weeks away from Christmas? Yeah, roughly. Not even a week away from Christmas. So it's an interesting time of the year as things tend to wind down, and we're seeing a lot less news coverage of things that are happening, although there's a lot of things that are happening. And the news media is being very selective about the stories they want you to see before the end of the year and start of the new year. They're preparing for the 2026 news cycle. But there's a few stories I think we should talk about, even here in the middle of the week, as it's ongoing, to see how this is going to affect all of us and how this may interact with the 2026 midterm elections, how it may affect international policy. There's a lot that we should have a conversation about. Now, mind you, I also want you to know I'm always open to hear your voices, to hear what you think about these issues. So you can always leave a chat or a super chat or a Rumble rant. You can reach us on X and on Facebook as well. We're always looking forward to hearing your voices, whether you agree or disagree with anything that I have to say, or if there's something in the news that I've missed so we can talk about it. Now, it's very much like the way we do our Sunday live stream. Wednesday's usually a little bit more reserved and a lot shorter, so there is that. So we're going to only go over a couple of things here, talking about what's happening with Dan Bongino, what's happening with Ukraine, what's going to be happening in New York in the 2026 elections. We just got out a poll. We're going to cover a bunch of those things. So I'm going to get right into that. I look forward to seeing all of your comments while we're live. I should first start off with, if you have the opportunity this Saturday, I believe that's the 20th, I will be interviewed at 1 p.m. on Saturday on the Charles Gaudia, the Opinion Guy program. And this should be rather interesting. He has a bunch of things that he wants to ask me about my past, about Russia, living out there, how that, the a coup attempt that happened out there running for elected office, and some current news as well. So he's going to try and get a little bit of everything in there. I'm looking forward to it. Um, I have no idea what the questions are. Just he gave me some general topics about my life. He said, I want to talk about it. Okay. So who knows what we may talk about? Please do give him a nice opportunity. Join us on Saturday, 1 p.m., so I can have the interview and he'll have an audience and it'll be fun for everybody. So I did want to mention that. Uh, let's start off, and I always like to start off with breaking news. And the breaking news that came out about 2.5 hours ago, this evening, was that Dan Bongino will be leaving the Trump administration in January. Now, we don't have an exact date of when he will be leaving. He's the number 2 individual in the FBI. Dan Bongino, for those who don't know, is a former Secret Service agent. So he has some qualifications and he's a very respected individual. The news media will play up the fact that he was also a podcaster. Well, that's after his career as a New York City police officer, after his career in the Secret Service. Then he went into doing podcasts. So to say he's a podcaster really is unfair, but that's some of the left-leaning news media want to focus on that to try and discredit him, discredit the Trump administration, and to more readily and more easily blame anything they think of as a flaw on Dan Bongino. Now, this is coming from Channel 4, Washington, D.C., and they state that the FBI Deputy Director, Dan Bongino, said that he plans to resign next month. That would be January 2026, somewhere in that time frame. We don't know when. We also don't know who Donald Trump would be looking to replace Bongino with. Very often, it's someone within the FBI. Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were from outside of the FBI and were placed in charge by the Trump administration. But we would expect someone who would replace Mr. Bongino would probably be a lifelong member of the FBI, and they'll be promoted up in the ranks and they'll jump into that role. That role isn't what most people thought it would be. And once again, it was a matter of perceptions. A lot of people thought that this would be a whirlwind change in the FBI, that Kash Patel and Dan Bongino would come in there and they would be able to change the entire culture and all of the actions of the FBI. It doesn't work that way. The United States is a giant of a nation. We have an enormous, immense bureaucracy, and it takes time for anything to happen. It's kind of the idea that we are this huge, slow-moving giant, and we don't move very often. In any part of the administration, anything that deals with America, we move very slowly, but when we do actually take action, well, then we cover huge strides. We move forward with great, I don't know what the word, exponentially. We are suddenly we cover a lot of ground once we do take action. So a lot of people have been looking at things like the tariffs, things like the foreign policy, looking at the e-files and the work of Patel and also with Bongino to have suddenly changed everything overnight. It doesn't work that way. That's never been the case. That's not how our government has ever operated in the last 100 years. So I wasn't expecting a lot. Now, I think Mr. Bongino thought he could get more done in the first year, the first 2 years, than he actually got done. I think that he had an unrealistic expectation, like most of the public, on what he could get done, what he could reveal, what he could get changed in terms of the culture of the FBI versus what we've been seeing for the last decade or two. And I think he's very disappointed. Matter of fact, we know he's spoken several times throughout the year since he got appointed, and he saw what the reality of the bureaucratic mess that is our government, I think he's mentioned several times that he's disappointed. He's not going to be able to get as much done as he wanted to do, that he had hoped was possible. And he had a different perspective on several of the hot button issues that, as a podcaster with less access, he had different opinions, then becoming the number two in the FBI and having different access and having a very different opinion. Will this help America? Yes, I think it does. I think this is good for Bongino. I think this is good for the Trump administration. I think this is good for America because if President Trump picks someone from within the FBI who is familiar with the bureaucratic process, has worked their way up in the ranks, and has the loyalty of all of the membership, and also knows how to dance with the politicians and how to move paperwork through the system, and to also identify when people are trying to use paperwork to blockade anything moving forward, as we saw for most of the year. Back in March, Donald Trump had said, release the e-files. And then we saw that many members of the FBI were blockading a lot of the information, slowing down the paperwork, slowing down the process, which had nothing to do with the Trump administration, but it made the Trump administration look bad, including Bongino. So someone who's in the FBI and is familiar with this paperwork nightmare that we have for a government, they would know when someone is, the term is called slow walking, and they would be able to identify that, and they would be able to correct that and move things forward a little bit faster. That would make Kash Patel more effective. It would make Pam Bondi more effective. I think that's a good thing. But this is the breaking news, and a lot of people are very surprised by this. I don't think they should be. And again, the news media right now is majority left-leaning, and they hate Donald Trump. They hate the Trump administration. They hate making America great, and they hate Republicans and conservatives. And they take every opportunity to besmirch and smear anything and everything that the Trump administration is doing and or any problem that they have. It's not to say that the Trump administration is running perfectly. It's not. It's not that I agree with everything the Trump administration has done. I don't. But it is another thing to say that, just as we have seen for the last 10 years, that the answer to everything wrong is Orange Man bad, the news media look at every aspect of the Trump administration, just like when he was the 45th president, and they are negative on everything. They try and make this the worst case scenario every case. We've seen consistently that the mainstream news media, about 80 to 90 news stories out of every 100 is negative, is somehow saying that the Trump administration has failed, there's chaos with Republicans, the economy is falling apart, we're in a depression, we're going to war. They will exaggerate and magnify every negative, and they will continue to push that narrative well past any other story just because they hate Donald Trump, and this helps Democrats. Every time they say Orange Man bad, every time they say this didn't happen in the Trump administration in the time frame that we initially may have expected, then they think that helps Democrats. It really doesn't, but it does make people upset about their government, and it makes people think that something is being held from them, when in many cases that's not true. Again, I refer to, look at the tariffs. We were told in April that the United States would go into a complete depression and that everything would be quintuple. You'd never be able to afford anything. Everyone would go bankrupt. Every business would close because of the tariffs. That isn't the case. That hasn't happened. Yes, there is some inflation, about 3%. Yes, we have seen that some things are well, they're about as expensive as under the Biden administration. Some things a little more expensive, some things less expensive. Fair enough. But the reality is the economy hasn't gone into a depression like we were told. We haven't gone into World War III. We have seen Donald Trump has authorized multiple times the release of the e-files, and we have seen the courts agree and are willing to release the e-files. This process is moving forward. It's just not happening tomorrow. And that's the expectations that we would have under any other president. We would think, okay, not such a big deal. We're going to get this eventually. These things are happening. They are in the process. But under the Trump administration, it didn't happen instantly. Therefore, it's never happening again. It must be a cover up. Trump is evil and guilty, and so is every other Republican. And don't look at Bill Clinton or Hakeem Jeffries or any of the was it Bill Gates or any of the other Democrats. Don't look at any of them. Ignore everything about them. Cory Booker. Just ignore all of that. We have to keep these things in perspective, I think. Now, if you think I'm wrong, please let me know. If you think that Dan Bongino leaving is going to have a massive disruption to the Trump administration, please tell me how. If you think that will be bad for the FBI, I'd like to hear your reasoning why. I don't know. And as for, I know some people are saying, well, what's Bongino going to do? Well, President Trump has stated he's probably going to go back to being a podcaster, someone like myself, which will be interesting since he has a very different perspective, having been in the government. So that he'll go back to doing what he's done before, or he may retire. I mean, he's an older man. He has had some medical issues. Either one is possible. Do I care? Not really. Not really. It's not important. The news media thinks it's important. They think that, oh my God, everything's falling apart. It's because everything is falling apart in the Trump administration. This is normal. Right around midterms, we normally see several people shift in and out of every administration. That's not unusual. Some people are replaced. They're not effective or they're politically dead weight. They get replaced. And we see other people step in. Like we had Jen Psaki doing she was under the Biden administration, the press secretary, and she was replaced by Karine Jean-Pierre. Was that a big deal? Was that, oh my God, the Democratic Party was falling apart? She got replaced. It happens. These are high pressure positions. I don't think it's a big deal. But again, if you think it is, tell me why. I'd be happy to hear about that. Let's move on. Because I think there's other news. That's the breaking news. And we always like to cover the breaking news whenever possible. But there is other news going on right now. In particular, Rob Reiner died. I think a lot of people were surprised. I was surprised to hear this, even though Rob Reiner was 78 at the time. He's an actor, director, and was a very active political activist. Very, very active and very outspoken. He didn't like Republicans. He didn't like conservatism. He didn't like Trump or MAGA. He made no bones about that. He was upfront, loud, and present about that. I did not agree with his political ideology. He made some great movies. I still think The Princess Bride is a phenomenal. It is a classic American film in the modern era. Love The Princess Bride. If you've not seen The Princess Bride, please go out and watch it. You will enjoy that. Anyone of any age will enjoy that movie. That was made by Rob Reiner. Fantastic. But I don't think about Rob Reiner, and I definitely don't think about his politics when I watch that movie. Because if I did, I wouldn't be able to watch that American classic movie. It would ruin it for me. So I very much separate his work from his political ideology. And he has the right to have whatever political ideology he wanted. He's an American citizen. He could say anything he wanted to say. I don't besmirch him or hold that back from him. But he wasn't a very pleasant man. And his opinion about Republicans, MAGA, conservatives, Donald Trump, they weren't kind. He wasn't a nice guy, at least in terms of politics. If you had different politics, different ideology than Rob Reiner, he isn't a nice guy. That being said, did he deserve to die the way he did? No. No one does. No one should have their own child stab them to death. It was very graphic, the death. And that is sad. That is a sad way to die. I did not wish death on Rob Reiner, even though I disagreed with him. And I would never wish this kind of death on him. And Donald Trump, wrong, right or wrong, however you want to look at it, had a harsher way of looking at it. Now, we have known Donald Trump can be mean. He can be petty. That is something he's always had the capability of being, mean and petty. And he was with Rob Reiner. And he wrote something that wasn't completely untrue, but it was unkind. He wrote about Rob Reiner and that Rob Reiner had TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, which he did, and that he died in a very, very bad way. True enough. It wasn't nice, but at the same time, it wasn't evil. Donald Trump wasn't being evil. He wasn't being gleeful. He just wasn't being nice. He was being mean. And the left have lost their mind. They have absolutely lost their mind. Oh my God, did you see what Donald Trump said? It's the worst thing you could possibly ever say. He's evil. Impeach him, impeach him, impeach him. Because they always say, impeach him, impeach him. But let's be realistic. These are the same people who were dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk. All of these leftists that are losing their mind that Donald Trump said something mean about Rob Reiner are the same people that danced on the grave and were gleeful, filling the airwaves with their mirth at the assassination of Charlie Kirk. They're not nice people. And it's a bit hypocritical for them to take such umbrage at what Donald Trump has said versus what they did. Look, the right, you look across the airwaves, you look across social media, most people on the right have said, Rob Reiner didn't deserve to die that way. Many of us liked his work, his movies that he made, some of the shows that he was on, fine. And we didn't agree with his politics. And no one would have wished him to die the way he did. And we acknowledge Donald Trump was being mean. But Donald Trump, I've seen some people say, I think here it is, where you see Simon Ateba, who is a reporter for Africa, the nation of Africa. He works for several organizations on that continent. And he's like, oh, well, Donald Trump was being unstable. He wasn't unstable. What Donald Trump did wasn't unstable, nor was it gleeful. It wasn't like what we saw from the left on Charlie Kirk. And by the way, the left is often gleeful when someone on the right dies or is injured. And this Charlie Kirk was not the first, and I fear he will not be the last time that we see the left dancing on the graves of people on the right. The right doesn't do that. And we didn't do that with Rob Reiner. Yes, sometimes we are mean. That happens. And I can understand that Donald Trump, it was personal for him. So he made it mean because it was personal to him. But they're losing their minds when the right was mad about tens, if not hundreds, if not perhaps millions of people on the right were dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk for daring to speak. They said, ignore it. The left, the Democrats, just said, oh, well, we'll ignore it. The leadership said, ignore it. It's not that big a deal. Poor taste, but it's okay. One man makes a tweet that's in poor taste, and the left is losing their minds because it's one of theirs. That is so hypocritical in their actions. They're losing their minds over one man when we were concerned about tens, if not millions, of Democrats and their gleeful actions. And they said, oh, no, that's okay. Just ignore it. You're being sensitive. You're being overly sensitive. It's not that big a deal. Free speech. Don't worry about it. So to the left that were dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk, I have nothing else to say to you guys but what you said to me and all the Republicans and conservatives and many independents out there. It's free speech. Suck it up, Buttercup. Sorry. That's what you told me when you said your things about Charlie Kirk. I say that now to you about Rob Reiner. Personally, he should not have died. Not in that manner. That was a horrible death. No one deserves to have that. But if Donald Trump wants to be mean about it, to the left, I say to you, free speech. Suck it up. Deal with it. It's one man's comment, not millions of people. Live with it. If you think I'm being harsh, if you think I'm being mean, if you think that's inappropriate, tell me why. But I think that is an appropriate way to look at this. Donald Trump wasn't irrational. He wasn't unstable. He was mean. There is a difference. And he definitely wasn't gleeful. All right. I don't really think there's much more to say on that story. I know the left wants there to be more on that story. They're trying to push and extend that story. It really isn't that big a deal. Really isn't. I don't think there's anything really in there. But if you think that what happened to Rob Reiner, the interaction with Donald Trump, if you think that's a bigger deal, tell me. I'd like to hear why, because I don't think it's a big deal. It's not nice, but it's not a big deal. Let's move on to political. We are seeing the end of the conflict between the Ukraine and Russia. That war is ending, and I think it's going to end in the first quarter of 2026. And while I've said the end is coming up, and I've said that before, we've been talking about this under the Trump administration. He's been working very hard to get this. This will be the 8th ceasefire and or peace from the Trump administration in the space of, a year or so, which is faster than most presidents don't even get one peace deal of any significance done in 4 years, sometimes even in 8 years. And Trump has accomplished 7 peace deals and ceasefires within the first 11 months of him being in the Oval Office. That, I think, is astonishing, and it should have got him the Nobel Peace Prize, quite honestly. If it were any other president, it would have guaranteed that he got at least one Nobel Peace Prize. But in this case, Trump didn't get that. But I think next year, in the first quarter, the conversations are ongoing. Ukraine has recognized they're in a losing position, and they're going to have to give up what they have lost. Not to give up more than what they've lost, but they must give up the land, the resources, the rare earth minerals, some of the farmland, some of the territory. What Russia has captured, they must give up. It's going to happen. And they have no choice about it. So we will see the eastern portion of the Ukraine, the southern portion, southeast portion of Ukraine connect with the Crimea, and that will be all Russian territory. I think that's going to happen. And I think that's going to happen next year. And I think that's going to happen in the first quarter because of the news we see here, which is not being really talked about by most of the mainstream news media. Because the leftist news media, the Democrats, want a forever war. That's what Joe Biden was trying to do. He was trying to authorize 10 years of funding from the United States to the Ukraine so that they could specifically and explicitly continue to fight against Russia. He wanted another decade of war. Democrats have been constantly saying they want more war, more war. Remember, they say that the Republicans are warmongers, that Trump is some kind of war hawk, but they want more war in Ukraine against Russia. That's the left that's pushing that. That's the Democrats that are pushing that almost overwhelmingly. Not to say there are no Republicans, but it's the left, it's the Democrats overwhelmingly that are looking for continued war at all costs. And that the United States will pay for the majority of that war. I don't agree with that because that eventually leads to U.S. troops putting their feet on the ground in the Ukraine. And the left, the Democrats, they will not agree with my stipulation that if one soldier puts their foot on the ground in the Ukraine, then the United States owns that ground. If we're going to fight and die and bleed, if our people will fight and die and bleed on foreign soil, we own that soil, period. I've said that about many conflicts around the world, and I say that about the Ukraine as much as I would say it about Venezuela, as an example. If the U.S. troops are on the ground, if they are fighting, then that land they are fighting for is United States property, no one else's. We own it until we decide to do otherwise. It becomes a commonwealth of the United States, whether that's the Ukraine or Venezuela or any other nation, I don't care where. We own it and we get to decide what we're going to do with it. And if we're not willing to do that, if we're not willing to take over those countries and make them commonwealths, then we don't need to put a single troop on the soil fighting on that ground. It's very simple. Now, since that is so simple, the answer is we can't do what Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Democrats have been fighting for, which is to have a forever war. Because Europe, in particular France, have been pushing to get U.S. troops on Ukraine soil fighting Russia. We can't do this. Especially since, as we see now in this poll that was just taken, as reported by Politico, Germany and France, they don't want to be in the war anymore. Their people are saying they don't want to pay for the war. They don't want to fight in the war. They don't want their people fighting. They don't want to send troops in. They don't want to be in. They're happy when America is on the line, when Americans are on the front line, when America is pulling the money out of our piggy bank to pay for something. They're perfectly happy. Under Joe Biden, the French and the Germans were absolutely pleased to continue to pay all the money, or rather, use American dollars to pay for all of the bills and the majority of all of the weapons and all of the troops. The United States put in the bill, absolutely, have a forever war. Let's go for the next 10 years. Now that it looks like that the United States has pulled back under the Trump administration, and I know there's some paperwork we'll go into it. But under the Trump administration, America has been trying to pull back and has been emphasizing peace talks. We have reiterated multiple times that both sides, Russia and Ukraine, must be serious about making concessions and that they must want peace. And if they do, the United States is here to broker that deal and make sure that they get peace. And it won't be perfect. And Ukraine is not going to be happy about it. Neither will Europe. But it will be peace. And that peace will last until there's another weak president in the United States. That's just a fact. But that's the way I see it. But I think it's interesting, and no one's really talking about it. You can see the numbers. Germany, France are saying no. They don't want to pay for it. They don't want their troops. They don't want to use their weapons and ammunition. They want an end to the war. They're done. And if the Ukraine, looking at this, France has been the number one proponent in Europe pushing for war against Russia. The French have been absolutely obsessed with using the US to fight this war and to fund this war forever on the behalf of France and the European Union. Now that the United States isn't, France is running away. And if France is running away, and they were the main ones trying to support this war going on for the next decade, if not forever, then this war is over. Ukraine cannot last without number one, U.S. support, and number two, they need the French. Desperately need the French, because the French hold together the EU on this issue. And the Germans, because they're part of the EU, they will contribute. But the Germans are afraid that if they keep going down this path, if they are too aggressive, Russia will turn off their power. Because Germany needs oil and gas, in particular gas, and that comes from the pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline, which comes from Russia. And if Russia is pissed off, as it has been at several points throughout this war, Russia just turns off the power. And in the middle of the winter, the Germans freeze to death. And in the middle of the summer, some of them boil. And Germany is very quiet. So if France isn't pushing Europe to defend the Ukraine, Germany gets the easy excuse to say, I'm not doing this anymore. It's not my fault, so that Russia doesn't pick on them directly anymore. And Ukraine has no more support. They lose the entire country. So they are more and more likely. So I say within the first quarter of 2026, you will see this war end. There will be peace talks. First a ceasefire, then peace talks. And I think this happens within the first quarter. The problem is, if I can identify these weaknesses and these problems, so can Russia. And you will see Putin try to leverage this to get even more than what Russia has, not just what Russia has won, but extra. And that's where the pressure comes from the United States to say, no, you keep what you fought, but not more. You don't get extras. Just because they're weak, just because France is running away, because France always runs away, because France always gives up, but just because France gave up doesn't mean you get bonus. You only get what you won, and you don't need to start fighting more. That's what America's here for. So we could see that. I think that's what the case is going to be, but I could be wrong. Now, I do see we have a comment here, and Dal says, didn't Congress pass another $800 bill, $800 billion for the Ukraine? Not quite. So, and I am aware. We just saw that the Senate passed a defense authorization funding, which I believe was about $1 trillion. And that did include funding for the Ukraine and some stipulations on Venezuela. So it wasn't because we're funding the war and we're not giving $800 billion to the Ukraine. We're not. That was the total package. And I believe it was closer to $1 trillion. But yes, a part of that is going to the Ukraine, just like part of the money is being allocated to deal with the Venezuela situation. And then we have China as well and the tariffs. But that's just the military defense authorization, their funding, to keep the military fully funded. So that when the government shuts down in January, which it probably will, Democrats will more than likely try to shut down the government again. And they will say again that it's the Republicans because of health care, and they will deny people food stamps. And they'll say that, well, it's the Republicans that are making people starve. Again, This will be because of Democrats, and they will say, no, no, we didn't get what we wanted in the negotiations. They're not happy. So the thing that Republicans never wanted, which is Obamacare, isn't going to get all the funding that Democrats have always wanted and Republicans never wanted. So no surprise there. They'll say that's not enough. They will say, if you don't give it to us, we'll shut down the government. They will shut down the government again, and we'll see a repeat of what we saw this year. Democrats will say this is a Republican, this is Trump's shutdown, that Republicans are trying to starve the people. They don't want you to have health care. And it will be, I am very sure, once again, the same thing we saw as last time. It's just all the Republicans will vote to keep the government open, and the Democrats will vote to keep everything closed until they can get what they want. And it won't be a negotiation. It will once again be Democrats saying, give us everything we want or else. They will hold America hostage. They will blame everyone except themselves for holding everyone hostage. The American people will suffer, and the Democrats will eventually bail. They'll finally give up. But this time it will be the second time that it's been done, and maybe they learn a better marketing tactic so they can blame it on Republicans and it actually sticks. Maybe. I don't think so. But that's pretty much what I would expect. So I hope that answers your question, Dal, on that money. So yes, we did see that funding of the Defense Department, which was meant to protect our military from the Democrats trying to shut down the government again in 2026, which I think will happen. Again, something that a lot of people aren't talking about. Okay. I'm going to move right along here. So we talked a little bit about the Ukraine, a prediction about that, a prediction about Democrats and government shutdown in 2026. We talked a little bit about Rob Reiner. Let me keep going here. And I'm going to bring up, here's something that a lot of people aren't talking about. But I think, what happened here? So I think this is interesting. And I think it would be of interest for a lot of people because immigration is a big deal. And you hear from the American left on a regular basis, nobody's an illegal alien. There's no such thing as being an illegal alien. All immigrants are legal. Talk to South Africa. No, they're not. Not true. No country agrees with that. No country believes that. Only there are progressives in various countries that believe this idea that no one's illegal and no one's illegal for immigrating into another country. Yes, every country thinks they are illegal. Every country has laws against it. That's because you are an illegal alien if you enter a country without documentation. Now, it's kind of interesting in this story, and I can't wait. I'm not sure if the news media is trying to figure out how to spin this story or if they're going to just avoid it altogether. But it seems that South Africa is trying to blame the United States for illegal aliens entering into South Africa. These are Kenyan individuals who are entering into South Africa, and they're blaming America. This is weird. It's a weird story, which is why I'm not sure if they're going to know how to. I don't know if the left wants to spin this story because I don't think they know how. There's too many parts to it. So let me explain. So right now, the United States has well over 19 countries that we are restricting from being able to come into America with ease. That's because we have to fix our vetting, the rules and style in which we do our vetting. We saw that after the Afghan refugees, two of them, one was trying to blow up Fort Hood, and another actually killed one of the two National Guardsmen in D.C. And so we've seen, and long before that, we've seen in 2022 multiple cases of some of these Afghan refugees who were not fully vetted have caused various crimes and sexual assaults against women across this nation. And so that's been a problem. So now we're finally dealing with that. And that means that we have to go through the vetting process and actually really vet them fully this time, a process that takes normally 18 to 24 months. And we are going to review each and every one of these individuals to see if they can remain in America or have they become a problem and a danger to American citizens. And other countries that were being let in under the Biden-Harris administration with little to no vetting also are now frozen so that we can do the proper vetting to make sure that we are doing everything to ensure that everyone who comes into America isn't going to be a threat to any American citizen, nor a burden to the U.S. economy. This is a good thing. There's no problem with that. First of all, we don't have an obligation to take in anyone from any other country. You can be a refugee, you can be an illegal alien. The United States has no obligation. We are not required to take in anyone from any country ever. And we can pick and choose who we do pick to come into America. It's our country. We have the right to say, it's like everyone in the world doesn't have the right to enter your home. You can pick and choose who you let through your front door. America is no different than your own front door. You don't have a door that's wide open and people just walk in whenever they want and live in your house and eat all your food, use all of your resources, your lights, electricity, all that. You don't do that. You control who comes into your home and what they can do. Well, America is just a larger extension of that same process. So I explain all that to explain what's happening with South Africa and what's happening with Kenya. So the United States, while we have restricted multiple countries like Afghanistan, Iran, much of the Middle East, certain countries in Africa that are in ongoing wars, places like Burkina Faso, places like the Sudan that are actively in the middle of war and have been infiltrated by groups like ISIS and Al Qaeda. After 2021, ISIS and Al Qaeda came to sweeping through Central Africa, and we have Eastern and Central Africa. And we've seen that their influence has caused a lot of wars and a lot of political turmoil. And there's been a lot of cells that have infiltrated into the populations. And so we need to vet them. Fair enough. South Africa really hasn't had that same influx of ISIS and Al Qaeda. And there are Afrikaners, according to the Trump administration, are threatened. We do know that the South African government has been fairly racist, whether you think it's justified or not, different question, but they've been fairly racist and fairly abusive to white farmers in that country because of the prior governments, the apartheid governments that existed for decades beforehand. But now the new government, which is not an apartheid government, is punishing those descendants for the actions of their ancestors, in particular white farmers. And they have made it legal for South Afrikaners, that's what they call themselves, Afrikaners, for the indigenous population to take the farms, literally take the property, the farm of a white family in South Africa, kick them out, and just give it to an African family, which is horrendous. This is redistribution at its fullest extent. This is what socialism does. This is what communism does. It is corrupt, and that is wrong. But that's what we're seeing. The Trump administration has taken this action and said, okay, we will allow even though most of Africa, in particular Central and Eastern Africa, are restricted until we can figure out our vetting, we can bring in people from South Africa because they're being persecuted, especially if they happen to be a white farmer. They're being targeted for violence and abuse by the government. They are persecuted, and therefore they are refugees, and we will allow them in expedited into America. I'm trying to shrink this story down. The thing is, the people who are doing the paperwork, again, the paperwork takes 18 to 24 months. So the South Africans are still going through the same process. They still have to go through the same 18 to 24 month process that should have been applied to Afghans, that should have been to the Afghan people, to people in Central Africa, people in South America. They're getting treated the same way. They still have to go through the vetting process. The thing is, the people who are doing the vetting process are Kenyans. And this is the part I don't get in the story. South Africa says Kenyan nationals have been arrested as of Tuesday and are being deported. They previously had been working. These Kenyans had tourist visas and went into South Africa. Then they got jobs working for the United States to do paperwork so that South African white farmers could come into America as refugees. This doesn't make any sense. Kenyan nationals came illegally, entered into South Africa on basically doing what happens here in the United States. They came with a tourist visa, and then they got a job, and they stayed, which is illegal, and they turned into illegal aliens. Why? They weren't there to visit. They were there to work and stay. And they got jobs, and they were staying in Africa, just like this happens in America, and that makes them an illegal alien. Therefore, they can't stay. That's why they're getting deported, just like we do in America. It is international. So nothing that's happening in America is different than what other countries do. You just don't usually hear the news about it. The only reason we're hearing about this is those same Kenyans that became illegal aliens for abusing the visa system were working for the United States. That's just weird. That's just so weird. The United States hasn't really said anything about this yet, but it's just a weird story. And we should hear more about it. Matter of fact, what is it? Dal, you know more about this probably than I do. You're familiar with South Africa more than I am. And you correctly say, entering a country without permission in writing, in other words, documentation, you're a legal alien, get out. True. Every country in the world pretty much says that. I just think I would love to hear the left try and explain this, to spin this and say, well, no, but Trump's evil and wrong for doing the same thing that South Africa, that Kenya, that every other country is doing. And these are, and somehow the United States is involved in this. I mean, I still don't get it. So you're in Kenya, you go to South Africa, you apply for a job with the American government to process the 18 months of paperwork for the South Africans to go to America. And you got kicked out of South Africa because you're an illegal alien in South Africa working for the United States that doesn't want to allow illegal aliens in. It's I don't know what the word is. It's just so, it's like a mirror. It's just weird to see this happen. I think this is an interesting story. The BBC is covering the story. The American news media, as I have noticed, is not. They don't want to talk about this. I think because it highlights that all of the far left who are talking about no one is illegal are obviously blatantly wrong. They're like, no one's illegal and the rest of the world agrees. No, none of the rest of the world does agree. And when they have the same situations happen in their countries as is what is happening in our country, the answer is catch those people and deport them. Period. Full stop. And America can't complain about that. No other country can complain. Those people have to be deported. Why? It's a crime. It is a crime not just in the United States, everywhere in the world. So one of the key things that the left love to protest and block off our streets and burn down our buildings to shout about is no one's an illegal alien. Here's proof. Yes, they are. And everyone in the world agrees on it. So I think that's the reason why you're not hearing more about this story. But it is ironic. It is interesting. And I think it should be more attention should be put on this. Also, the news media doesn't want to talk about the white Afrikaners in South Africa. They don't want to talk about that because they want you to think, well, the South African government, the Africans there, they are the black people there, that they're the good guys and the white people are bad guys. And they don't want you to think anything else. South Africa was all about apartheid. Therefore, white people the white Afrikaners, they're evil, they're bad by birth, by the color of their skin. Don't think about it. Don't think about anything that's happened in the last 2 decades, 3 decades. Don't even think about it. Don't think about the laws that are happening right now and how they are abusive and threatening people's lives and harming people's lives. Don't think about that. Always remember the past the way that the left wants you to remember the past, which reinforces the leftist ideology in America, but has nothing to do with the truth in the world. That's what I think's happening, but I don't know. Dow says, South African bureaucracy is horrendously corrupt and not very well organized. I agree with that. Were these Kenyans hired through the U.S. Embassy? That's not clear. Again, I only have one article on this. It's not international news, not big international news. The BBC has covered the story. Not many other countries have. The United States isn't touching this with a 10-foot pole. So I don't have absolute confirmation. I trust the BBC to an extent. As an example, the South African Home Affairs Department said that the raid showcased the commitment that South Africa shared with the United States combating illegal immigration and visas. No U.S. officials were arrested. This isn't a diplomatic incident, which makes me think that this might be kind of connected to the State Department, that the State Department may have outsourced this to a local agency, and that local agency is responsible. It's not clear, but it doesn't seem to be directly tied to the U.S. Embassy. It doesn't seem to be directly tied to the U.S. State Department. Again, I think people should check out the story. There's more to it, but it's hard to find out. No one wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. By the way, this came out yesterday. You probably didn't hear about this. President Donald Trump further restricts and limits the entry of foreign nationals to protect the security of the United States. Did you know you could see the actual White House documentation? You don't have to only believe the 30-second summary that you'll see over at Axios or the Huffington Post or NBC, where they put their spin on the story and tell you that Donald Trump hates black people. He just hates black people. No. Did you notice that the countries, which also includes some Caribbean countries, that would be Bermuda and what is it? Bermuda. There was another one. I don't have it now. Bermuda and another country. It's not. I thought one of the additional countries that would be restricted would be Haiti. It's not. Bermuda and not Trinidad, but one of the others were being restricted. And that's because they have problems. Many of these countries, and again, look at Congo, Rwanda, Chad, look at, again, Sudan, Burkina Faso. These are countries that have a lot of problems. And so you can see countries like Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran. Oh, Haiti is on the list. Okay, I thought they would be. Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen, and also Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, Syria. Do you notice what's similar in all these countries? Massive upheavals in the government, massive internal fighting and civil wars, governments that are weak, corrupt, or non existent whatsoever. And every one of these countries, every single one of these countries, you see this. And there's also Sierra Leone and Laos, Burundi, Cuba, Tobago, Venezuela. There's also 15 more: Angola, Antigua, that's it, Antigua, Barbuda, Benin, Ivory Coast, Dominica, Gabon, Mauritania, Senegal, Tanzania, Tonga, Zambia, Zimbabwe. All of these countries have absolutely horrendous governments, massive corruption, internal strife and fighting. Many of them have confirmed organizations like ISIS and Al Qaeda and other extremist terror groups that are in their countries that are promoting a lot of this strife. We don't need that in America. We have enough problems as is. But people want to say, oh, no, but it's because they're black people. It's because they're brown people. Let me ask you, when you're looking at countries that are predominantly, we're talking about European countries, we're talking about Spain, Portugal, even if you're looking at places like Brazil, you're not seeing the same kind of internal strife. You're not seeing the same kind, Japan, Korea, you're not seeing people getting blown up walking down the street. You're not seeing these extremist fanatical organizations, these terrorists, trying to infiltrate and destroy people and destroy the government and destroy America. You're not seeing that. But these countries you are. The fact that they happen to be African and or South American or Middle Eastern is a byproduct of the terrorist organizations and what they're doing. Again, we're taking people from South Africa, we're bringing them over. There are parts of Africa that we are bringing into. There's 56 countries in Africa. We haven't blocked all 56 countries in Africa from sending people to the United States to have them come in. That's not a fact. We've been taking people in. There's 12 different countries in South America, and we're taking in almost all of them. I'm talking about legal immigration. So Southeast Asia has 30 countries, and we're taking in almost people from almost every one of those countries have the ability to come to America. Just a handful don't, 2 or 3. The media likes to paint this negatively because they don't want to show you the list so that you can then take that list, look through the international news, and see the violence, the corruption, the amount of terrorism in each and every one of those countries. And then you can ask yourself, do I want to risk having some of the terrorism that I see in these foreign countries in my neighborhood? And it's just that simple. If only 1% of the terrorists and fanatics in these foreign countries, if there's only 1%, so out of every 100 people we allow to come into the United States, if only one of them is a terrorist, fanatical, berserk maniac, that's one person more than we had in America to start with. That's one person more that could have been prevented. And if that maniac, like we saw with the Afghan shooter in DC, if they lose their mind, people will die. And those deaths are something that could have been avoided. And it could be someone that you know. It could be your family member. It could be in your community, in your neighborhood. It could be someone that you look up to. And we could have prevented that. Do you really want that? The answer is no. That's what every normal person will realistically say, no, I don't want that. I don't want that in my community, and I don't want it for someone else's community, because there are some people like over at Martha's Vineyard. They were very happy to say, oh, yeah, the illegal aliens, fantastic. Open border, as long as it's not in their community. As if it's in your community, whether these people are criminal or just poor, they don't care. If you have to deal with it, it's okay. But the moment that they got, 36 people step foot on Martha Vineyard, and they asked the people of Martha Vineyard to do the same thing they're asking people in every town USA to do, they put all those people on a bus and shipped them out. They got those people deported instantly. You can't stay in Martha's Vineyard. Oh, no, 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 no. Illegal aliens can't go to Martha's Vineyard, but they can go to your community. They can bring and again, only 1%. All of them, including that 1%, they can live in your community all day long. They can commit crimes in your community all day long. They can be a burden on your community in terms of feeding them, housing them, everything. That's your problem. But you can't do it in Martha's Vineyard. Cannot. It's just rude. Dow says that when we see people being vetted to come into the United States and it's not going through an embassy, that's normally an NGO, which means they're being hired locally. Yeah, probably. Again, details are unclear. But I just wanted to point this out. I wanted to point this out because I thought it's important, because no one's talking about it with you. No one. And you deserve to know. And you deserve to be able to see. The link will be in the description. You can look at the list yourself. You can look at the condition of those countries yourself, and then you can make the decision and say, gee, is it racist, or is there a problem there that America should be aware of? That's that simple. Now, before I go any further, because I just noticed it, I want to say thank you, John. John just provided a super chat for $19.99. And folks, guess what? We are trying to raise money because my solution to homelessness is not the same as Zoran Mandami. It's not the same as many people on the left. I don't want to wait for the government to fix this. I disagree with Zoran Mandami and the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA. I don't agree with them that government can fix every problem, large and small. I do agree that government is pretty much the cause of most of the problems, large and small. And I don't trust them to fix anything, because they don't. Look at California. The number one largest homeless population in all of America exists in California. They haven't fixed it. That's been true for years. We're getting over a decade now that's been true. And they're defecating all across the streets. What did the government do? Oh, they hired people to pick up the feces, the human feces. That was their solution. What's the solution in New York? Zoran Mandani is the incoming mayor to New York. His answer for homelessness: let the homeless live in the park. Yesterday, it was 24 degrees with 4 inches of snow on the ground in New York City. 4 inches of snow on the ground, 24 degrees, not counting the wind chill. And the answer for those who are homeless, the veterans, families that are in need, Zoran Mandami said, let them sleep in the parks. That's not a solution. So what I have done is I'm taking half of everything I receive from super chats, from Rumble rants, from going, if you go to Zazzle to buy mugs and T-shirts and all of that gear, if you go to PayPal or the Patreon, I am taking half of everything I made in December and also in November, and I'm going to give that to the Jericho Project January. Half of everything I've gotten, all the proceeds from November and December, are going to them. And that includes $10 from John with his 1999 super chat. You can also help if you wish. And that's for the Jericho Project, as he says, and I appreciate it. The Jericho Project appreciates it. Thank you very much. John's been fantastic. He's been helping us so much with that. And of course, I'm putting my money on the line too. And you will see, I will make the payment live during a live stream. I will make the payment so that you can see me do it. Just like I did after my birthday, I made the donation to the charity, to Jericho Project, and I showed you all the dollars, exactly all the money that was spent. I showed you. I'll do it again because I'm a man of my word. Okay, so we only got about another hour left. So let me jump back in here. And let's go to, I wanted to talk about the Siena Poll. It's crazy right now. And in New York, it is probably one of the craziest times we have ever seen. We've got the socialists making a surge. We've got people like Jasmine Crockett, who is trying to become a senator in Texas, even though her only answer is racism and Orange Man Bad. That's it. She's running on Orange Man Bad and racism. If you don't like her, if you don't vote for her, well, then you're a sexist, racist, because she's a woman and black and Orange Man Bad. That's all she has to run on. That's her entire campaign. And I've already had people yelling at me, going, Mike, you can't pick on Jasmine Crockett because, she's a woman, she's black. You can't argue with that. I'm like, yes, I can. Yes, I can. She's a terrible candidate. Absolutely. She's horrendous. And she's willfully manipulative. She pretends to be dumb to get easy votes. She is a minstrel. And for those who are, for the black people in the audience, you know what a minstrel show is. And that's what you get with Jasmine Crockett. But that being said, in New York, we have just as many problems. We have Kathy Hochul, who is running for governor, presumably, in 2026. And Antonio Delgado, her lieutenant governor, he's just trying to make some money. He's got nowhere to go. He has no upward mobility. He's not worth talking about. So he's gone because he can't win. But speaking about who can't win, now, obviously, the governor's race, I've mentioned to you that I think my good friend, Larry Sharp, who is a Marine and is running in the 2026 New York governor's race. In fact, he was the first candidate to declare running for the New York governor's race. I do support him. He's a libertarian. And he has actually a good chance to win under certain conditions. But Elise Stefanik, as expected, as I have been saying since about March, I've said that Elise Stefanik is running for governor, and she is. And about a month ago, I said, maybe over the summer, I said, watch out, Bruce Blakeman is probably going to try and primary Elise Stefanik for the governor's race, for the Republicans. The problem is, neither of them can win. Bruce Blakeman can't win because no one knows who he is, and no one cares. And he has no plan. And Elise Stefanik, who more people know than Bruce Blakeman, she also has no plan, and she's going to lose. And it's not because I don't like them, and it's not because I'm a Democrat. I'm a Republican. I ran as a Republican for Congress. I'm very outspoken in my views. I am a hardcore conservative Republican. But I also believe in reality. It's one of the reasons why I support Larry Sharpe, because I believe in reality and I want solutions. And if we see solutions, we can get something better. And that means we'll get better candidates. And if we get better candidates, we can win elections. That's what I think is the reality. And we're not getting that right now. According to Siena, and the reason why I'm looking at this poll isn't because this specific poll says that that Stefanik is losing by 19 points. It's the fact that there is a trend. And her trend is she's continuing to lose by about 20 points, poll after poll after poll. And I know some people will say, but Mike, there was that Manhattan Institute poll, and it put Stefanik at 42% versus Kathy Hochul at 43%. It was a 1% poll. That was a rigged poll. That was not a real poll. It was not honest. And it's a one-time poll. One time. They haven't repeated that number. Every other poll done by every other institution isn't coming up with the same numbers. It was a gimmick. But what we have seen is repeatedly, according to what we're getting out of the Siena College, we keep getting the same numbers, which would be right about here. Here we go. And I will have the link for this so you can see. And what we're seeing is consistently, while Stefanik does well with Republicans in New York State, there's only 23% of Republicans in New York State. Even if Stefanik or Bruce Blakeman were to get 100% of all the Republicans, if every Republican actually showed up and voted, and they all voted absolutely straight down the line, Elise Stefanik and all the Republicans, or Bruce Blakeman and all the Republicans straight down the line, neither Bruce Blakeman nor Elise Stefanik could win. Neither of them. They both fall short by at least 20 points because all the Republicans are 23%. If they got every Republican, they got nothing else, they would lose 23% to 77%. They'd be blown out the water by over 2-1. So they have to get Democrats on board. They have to get independents on board, and they can't. And we've seen consistently that as much as Elise Stefanik, she's not even trying to get independents. She isn't even trying to get Democrats to vote for her. I say that not because I think she's a bad person. I don't think she's a bad person. But I want you to see, and I will show you right now. So this is Elise Stefanik's governor page. I'm not hiding anything. This is the page. You can go there right now. You'll see it. And what you also see is if you scroll right down, matter of fact, let me start from here. You know what you don't see up here? What's her policies? What does she stand for? What will she do? If she were to win, what will she do? What will she fight for and how? I mean, you're going to say, well, she's going to cut taxes. Every Republican in every race in all my life have said, we're going to cut taxes. Everyone says that. That doesn't mean anything. How are you cutting taxes? Cutting taxes from where? For who? By how much? Yeah, that we don't have an answer on that. So that's not really important. So she's got no policies. We don't know what she's going to do. She says, I'm going to make New York affordable and safe. How? How? What? That means you need a policy. What is your policy? She doesn't have it up at the top, so you can't search for it. You go through the page, and it goes, here's her top priorities. And I pointed this out before. That is her suggestions. Those aren't policies. Those are suggestions. By the way, you try and click on it, it won't bring you anywhere. You can't go anywhere. She has no description. She has no answer. So what she's going to tell you is, again, she's going to cut taxes like every Republican forever. means nothing. By how much are you cutting taxes? Where are you cutting taxes? Going on and on and on. Okay, she's going to support parents' right or parental rights. Fantastic. How? On what subject? Parental rights for choosing schools? Are we talking about the trans issue? Are you talking about healthcare for your kids? Are we talking about the jab? What do you mean parental rights? Is this about divorce and who gets to keep the kids? Does that include fathers' rights on being able to see their kids? What does parental rights mean? She doesn't explain. She has no answer. She doesn't have a policy. I just gave you half a dozen different ways that parents' rights has a half dozen different issues, half dozen, under that same term. And she doesn't explain any of it. So that means this is a suggestion. She has no plan. She doesn't expect to win. You would think she puts out a page, she's going to have something to say to you. But let me be clear about this, because Bruce Blakeman is just as bad. He's also a Republican. He's going to challenge Hochul. He's also losing. He's losing by 25 points versus the 20 points that we see Stefanik is losing by. And Bruce Blakeman's like, I can win because in Long Island, and only in Long Island, he gets votes from Latinos and Black people and women and Democrats. He gets crossover votes. Fantastic. That's good. In Long Island. What about the rest of the country? What about the rest of the state? If I go to Binghamton and ask people, who's Bruce Blakeman? They have no idea who he is. If you go into Utica and you ask, who's Bruce Blakeman? They have no idea. They've never heard of him. They've never talked to him. And by the way, if you mention that he's a New York City downstate politician, they'll say they hate him and they won't vote for him. That's what upstate New York says. Same thing that they say about Elise Stefanik. Well, actually, they don't say about Elise because she's upstate. But he's from New York City. They say that all the time. So looking at Blakeman, no policies. He has a record. There's things that he's done. Won't hold that against him. And again, I'm not saying that he's a bad person. I'm not saying that Elise is a bad person. Where's his policies? He doesn't have any. Go through the page. He'll tell you about him and how he's such a great guy and that he does really, really well in Long Island, nowhere else. And that no one else knows about him. He says, I'm really, really popular in Long Island. I'm really effective in Long Island. What about the rest of New York State? Goes on to say, see, here's all the things he did that were really, really, really great. And you can see all the ways he's going to describe how great a job he has done in Long Island. He didn't do anything in Western New York. He didn't do anything in the North Country, Central New York, Southern Tier. He didn't do anything for any of those areas. Nobody knows him. In Cortland County, they do not know Bruce Blakeman's name because they have no reason to. So this doesn't mean anything. I did a great job in Long Island. Fantastic. What about the rest of the state? Well, I didn't deal with the rest of the state. Then I don't care. Because that doesn't mean just because you were good in one very specific, very unique place. Long Island is very unique since it's so close to New York City, but yet it's not New York City. It's a very unique place with very high-end incomes overall. It's not normal. It's not the same profile as the rest of upstate New York. It's not like the rest of the state. So he does have, okay, that's what he's done. But what we're looking for here is, okay, where are your policies? Bruce, what are you going to do if you win? You're telling me how great you are. I get that. What if you win? I understand, but I've been really good. I get that. What are you going to do if you win? What are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for the people in Binghamton, in Greene, in Oswego, Owego? What are you going to do for those people? Plattsburgh. What are you doing for them? Anything? Any idea? Can you tell me anything you're going to do for the rest of the state? I know you did great for Long Island. Fantastic. And everyone else? Again, he's even worse than Elise. Elise at least has a list of ideas as I just showed you, which doesn't make any sense. It's useless because it doesn't say anything. But Bruce is saying even less. The only thing he's saying is, black people like me. Hispanics like me. They like me more than they like Elise Stefanik. And in Long Island, it's true. But again, if you go back to the polling, as we can see, if you look at the polling as per what we see from Siena College, no, black people, Hispanics across the state, no, they don't like Bruce Blakeman any more than they like Elise Stefanik for the same exact reasons. You're a Republican in a bluer than blue state with no plan, with no policies. Why should they like you? My God, this is a horrible. Look, I want my friend Larry Sharp to win because he does have plans. He does have policies. I don't even have to. It's not even like I'm making that up. I wasn't even going to make this about Larry. I really wasn't. So I'm just bringing up his. Here it is. So here's Larry's page. And again, I just showed you Elise Stefanik's page. I just showed you Bruce Blakeman's page. What does that say for Larry Sharp? Policies. I click on it. Boom. And all of a sudden, we've got policies. We've got policies and actual things that Larry stands for. No one else has that. You won't get this from Antonio Delgado. You don't get this from any of the other governor candidates. So there you go. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all of that crap up is I think it's important. And, I want to show you this here. This is Bruce Blakeman, and he's talking to Spectrum News. And this is why Republicans are losing. This is why Republicans are losing in blue states, and we need to stop doing this. That's the real point here. Not so much to promote my good friend Larry Sharp, but I don't mind doing that. But this is why we are losing, and this is why the left is trying to say, we're going to lose the 2026 midterm elections. No, we shouldn't. But this stuff is why we might lose the 2026 midterm elections. Here's Bruce Blakeman.
This is something that Stefanik wants as well. Just give me one area where you and Stefanik diverge.
Now, I want you to see, this is her interview on Spectrum News. She says, give me one area where you and Stefanik diverge. This is a 7-minute interview on her credible news agency. This is the third time she has asked this question of Bruce Blakeman. The third time. Not the first time, not the second time. This is the third time she has said, what's different? What are you offering? And here's his answer.
Well, there's a few areas where we diverge, but basically, I'm a pro-choice Republican. I believe that a woman has a right to choose in the early term of her pregnancy. So I think that's a key difference. I think the fact that I have the executive experience and that she doesn't, I think those are key differences. I mean, I have run a county larger than many states.
So there's been exactly two things. He's pro-choice, where Stefanik is pro-life. Okay, not really a difference, especially in New York State. Abortion's a thing. It is a fact. It is part of our Constitution. So being pro-choice or pro-life means nothing. It's not something that's going to win you votes in New York State. And his other answer is, I have experience. So does Elise. So does Larry Sharp. A lot of people have executive experience. Yeah, you have experience in Long Island. What does that mean to anyone else? Nothing. Elise has experience in Congress. What does that mean to people throughout the state? Nothing. So they're the same thing. There is no difference. The difference is none of them have policies, except for Larry Sharpe, but none of the Republicans do. Please, Republicans, GOP across New York State and across the country. I know some of you guys pay attention to this program. Stop doing this. You want people to follow the Republican values. They want them to vote for Republican candidates. Give them something to vote for. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I just can't stand it. Okay. We're finishing up, folks. We're going to be finishing up shortly. And I do hear my dog, and he's asking. I don't know if he's going to sleep or if he wants me to give him a walk. But let me see here. So Dow says, we got some more comments, and Dow says, cutting taxes is meaningless unless Stefanik plans to cut spending as well. We don't know. She won't answer the question. She's done one interview in 2 months of mentioning that she's running for the position. She won't talk to the public, and she doesn't have a plan. So I don't know. Repeal the SAFE Act. Don't know. She won't speak on that. Reformation of the Criminal Weapon Possession Code. Enacting Castle Doctrine. Repealing duty to retreat. None of these things are something that either Blakeman nor Stefanik have said anything about. They don't have a policy. There's nothing on it. Second Amendment, who knows? None of them touch it. He goes on to say, while maintaining a pro-choice stance in social welfare programs, hey, that's Blakeman. That is what he believes. And she'd have to balance everything to garner enough votes. She won't. She hasn't. Sharpe is the best chance for getting a modicum of positive change to the state. I agree. I honestly agree. I'm a Republican, conservative Republican. I tell you, there's only one candidate right now that has actual policies that actually make sense. It's not Kathy Hochul. It's not Antonio Delgado. Sadly, it's not either of the Republican candidates. It's Larry Sharpe. That's just the truth of it all. Okay. I wanted to talk about the Virgin Islands real quick. Probably be the last thing I'm going to talk about tonight. Yeah. So here's another news story that you probably haven't heard a lot about. Give me 1 second. You probably haven't heard a lot about. The U.S. Virgin Islands is trying to strip away the Second Amendment rights of the public. They're trying to be the Democratic Socialists of America. They're trying to say the Second Amendment doesn't exist, that you do not have a right to defend yourself, to protect yourself, that you should be just like the people in Australia. And we saw what happened over this weekend in Australia. The two guys with a couple of guns were absolutely confident that they could just shoot people forever because there was no one who was going to stop them, because no one else had a firearm to be able to hold them off, to shoot them, to stop them. No one had you were not going to get a good guy with a gun. That is the way that mass shootings inevitably always stop. Just that didn't happen. Virgin Islands is saying, so we have the Trump administration right now that is fighting to protect people's rights to have a firearm, to be able to defend themselves. And I found it very interesting. Did I highlight it? No, I didn't. So what the Virgin Islands is doing is they are changing the goalposts on a regular basis. They say that you have to have a good reason to fear death or great injury to your person and property. This is for you to get the right to get a handgun, to get a firearm, to be able to defend yourself. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. Your right to defend yourself shall not be infringed. In the Virgin Islands, they say, well, you have to have a good reason. Who decides what's a good reason? If I'm afraid of great injury to me or my family and friends or my property, but you don't think that, who gets to win? If the government says, well, I don't think that's a big issue, I think it is. I've got a stalker. Women may have a stalker and they're like, oh my God, this guy is creeping me out. I'm afraid for my life. And the government goes, well, he hasn't actually done anything to you, so we don't think there's a problem there. You don't get to defend yourself in the Virgin Islands. And that stalker can assault you anytime they want to because they don't think you have a good reason. This is crazy. They go on to say, and you have to have two people that the Virgin Islands thinks is credible, two people that they like, to be able to say, no, you should have a gun. You know what this reminds me of? New York State. Trying to get a handgun or firearm in New York State, very much the same exact process as what we're seeing here in the Virgin Islands. They change this on a regular basis. They also add in, they regularly refuse people to have a permit. You have to let them into your house. You have to schedule 7 months to a year ahead of time to be able to let someone from the government to walk into your house to see that you bought a gun safe and that it is bolted into the ground or into the wall so that they will give you a permit. And if you do not let them into your home and you do not let them get to inspect your house for their safety, to make them feel like you've done what they wanted, you don't get to have the firearm to protect yourself and your family. So they get to violate your privacy and they get to destroy your Second Amendment rights. This is exactly like New York. They've been trying to pass that very same gun safe law, and the fact that you would have to have inspections in your home. The New York State Assembly has been trying to pass that forever. I've covered it many, many times on this channel. They're trying to get that passed and say, you can't get a license unless you have a gun safe, and that the local sheriff, the local state trooper, the New York State government has to be able to inspect your house at a moment's notice at any time to verify that you have your guns put away completely safe and that safe is locked at all times. And if you don't do that, they'll take away your guns, they'll take away your property, and perhaps they'll even take away your kids. Because just like with red flag laws, if the government has to take away your right to the Second Amendment, then that home is too dangerous for that child to be there. So they will take away your child as well. Yes, red flag laws take away your children, not just your guns. And that is a fact. And again, red flag laws, you don't have to break any law. No laws are necessary. You don't have to break a single law. You just have to be accused. And if you've been accused, you are therefore guilty, and they will punish you. And then you have to fight the legal system. You have to fight New York State to get back your property and your children. The part that the news media loves to leave out, and your children, because they will take all of that from you. This is what the Virgin Islands is doing. The Virgin Islands is being New York State in the Virgin Islands. They are ripping people's rights out of their life. They're endangering people's lives. Nobody's talking about this. This story comes from PBS. It came out on the 17th, today, at about almost 2 o'clock. No one's talking about this. This is an important case. This is important to understand. Your rights are being stripped state by state by state, one after another, with different laws. And if we look at what they've been doing, they are stripping all of your rights, all of your freedoms. They are leaving you defenseless. They're telling you, don't worry, the government will protect you. Well, that's what they told people in Australia. And how did that work out? The government's going to protect you. Yeah. Those 4 police officers, they were standing out there for 15 minutes, didn't do anything. Watched as people were being killed and did nothing. And we've seen this in Uvalde. We've seen this in a lot of places where the government, they're not doing anything. They're not going to protect you. and they've stopped you from being able to protect yourself. And then they say, well, you're the bad guy because why do you need the gun? Because I don't trust the government. Because the government will do something stupid like Zoran Mandami and say, hey, you're homeless. What could we do? We could either put you in a shelter or, no, I got a better idea. Zoran Mandami has a better idea. He's going to put you into a park in 24-degree weather with 4 inches of snow on the ground and the wind blowing at 15 miles an hour. And that's his answer. That's his solution to homelessness. Yeah, I don't trust the government. I do not trust the government. You shouldn't trust them either. And there are people who say, but Mike, you don't understand. I mean, these are the same laws from Kathy Hochul in New York State. These foundational laws, the gun industry projects, guns in public. New York is the fourth most restrictive state in the country. By the way, gun homicides, gun violence is today, 2025, is higher than 2019. They will tell you, oh, no, gun violence is down versus 2021 when we had a peak. That was during the summer of love and peace with the BLM riots. Yeah, other than the BLM riots, then if you're looking at from 2015 to 2019, in fact, from 2019 going back to 2000, we have more gun violence today than any of that 2 decades of time. But they will lie to you and say, well, gun violence is down versus, this year versus last year. It's down from the peak. They forget to tell you when the peak was. The peak was 2021. The peak was the riots of BLM. If you're not comparing, but that wasn't normal. That's right after the lockdowns. Nothing was normal then. If you compare what's happening right now to what was normal 2019 and before then, we are higher than those numbers today by about 30%. They're saying, oh, it's down 25%. That's how high and how bad the violence got. But even at the 2019 levels, even if you believe that where we are right now is suddenly safe, it's not. Number 4, and we are still one of the leading violent. 984 people are shot every year in New York State. That's for number 4. That's with all the gun restrictions. So they're not making you safe. They're not making you safe. I just wanted to point this out to people because a lot of people just don't realize that. I will have links in the description for everything I'm talking about so that you can see this for yourself and you can make up your own mind. Oh, final thing, which is about casinos. I was talking to my good friend. I was talking to my friend Kit Cabello over in Chicago. So people in Chicago, this is important for you guys. They are currently, Mayor Brandon Johnson is trying to get casinos into Chicago, and they're making the promise that if they get casinos in Chicago, well, that's going to make everything better. They're suddenly going to be able to pay all the bills. Chicago will no longer be in debt, and they'll be able to pay for education and helping the homeless. It's a lie. This is never going to happen, and they're lying to your face. And if you do this, if you allow casinos in Chicago and you expand that, you are going to have more crime. You're going to have more poverty. That is a fact. That happens every single time. Every single time that we see a state that says, I will just open up casinos and that will help us pay for education for our kids. It's going to help us pay for protecting people. It's going to help to fix the roads and build buildings and build homes. It never happens. Never. I'll give you a great example. Again, this is what they're promising people in Chicago. Where is it? Is this it? I thought. Hang on one second. I'm trying to find that article. Where's my Chicago article? Bear with me, guys. There it is. Yeah. My computer's having a moment to reset. So Bally's has already said to Chicago, this isn't going to work. This is a bad idea. And I can tell you, because it didn't work in New York City either. And they've made all the promises. They've lied to people. It's never going to work. The people in Chicago, I am telling you now that you should. I'm trying to bring up this page and it doesn't want to do that. Don't allow Mayor Brandon Johnson to put casinos in your city. It will only increase the amount of crime. You will only suffer. You will only suffer. This will not help you at all. Do not do this. Do not do this at all. No. I'm trying to bring up this file so I can show it to you guys. There it is. So again, Bally's is warning one's video gambling plan could cost Chicago millions. They're already telling you this is going to cost you millions. And it's going to be worse than you think. They're already warning you and saying, this is not going to be in your advantage. Do not do this. But they're going to do it. Mayor Johnson, the Democrats are going to make this happen, just like we're seeing happening in New York City and has already happened in New York City. Let me explain real simple. How do casinos make money? It's real simple. Casinos make money by taking money from the community away from the people. That's it. They don't produce anything. They take money from the community or anyone who's visiting the community. They take money from everyone. That's how the casino makes a profit, and that's how they stay around. If the casino fails, that means the community kept their money. If the casino is doing any kind of okay, if they're even operating, that means they're taking money from the community, that money that could be going to the homeless, to help families, to help illegal immigrants, to do whatever you want to do, healthcare. It's not going to be there. Why? The casino took it. So that means you will have poorer quality of life, which usually stimulates more crime, which means that people are going to go into poverty more. They're going to be oppressed more. They're going to have a terrible life. Never let a casino in your community. And you can check the numbers over and over and over again. The first 6 months will always look like it's perfect. And the news media, the politicians will try and come out and within the first 6 months say, see, this was such a great idea. You know, everyone got hired. Everyone's doing well. There is no crime. Mike was wrong. Go back 4 years. Go 4 years later. Go back to that same community. Higher crime, more poverty, more unemployment, drugs. You're going to see that all in that community every single time. You go back 4 years, you will see it. They'll do the ad in the first 3 months and they'll say, it worked. It's perfect. This is a great idea. Within 4 years, not after 4 years, within 4 years, you will have higher poverty. You will have higher crime. You will have more drugs. The community will be worse off every single time. Trust me, I've seen this happen in New York, in upstate New York. It's happening right now in New York City. And it's going to keep on happening. And if you do it in Chicago, you're going to have the same results that New York State has, as well as many other states, state after state, Ohio, Pennsylvania. They've all done this. Baltimore, Maryland, I think they've done it as well. Every state that's been trying to do this, casino will pay for everything. Every single one of them have found out casinos pay for nothing. Casinos cause more problems every single time. So Dal had a couple of comments here, and one of them is, I'm so tired and disgusted with our governments treating the Second Amendment as a second-class right. I don't deny you are right. That's true. All right. But folks, it's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week. We covered a bunch of stuff. I hope you found it interesting. Dal says, what else? Casinos tied to the auspices of government. Magnanimity. That's a tough word. I know what the word is. I hear it in my head, but it's hard to say. Magnanimity are just a legal form of money laundering for the state government. Well, kind of. State-run casinos are kind of a money laundering scheme. They really are. But I will be back on Sunday. I know Christmas is coming up. I don't take breaks. That'll be episode 51. There's 52 weeks in a year, and I'm right on track to do 52 of my Sunday live stream episodes again. So do check that out. We'll probably have some videos up throughout the week. Remember, on this Saturday at 1 p.m., I will be on with Charles Garia, as you can see here on his channel, The Opinion Guy. He will be interviewing me, and it should be rather interesting. I do advise you check it out if you can. Give him a like when I'm there. Guys, I want to thank you. I hope you had a great night. I'm going to try and have a cigarette and enjoy my night, see how my dog is doing. I hope you're going to have a great night as well. Let's get through the week. Christmas can't come fast enough. I look forward to seeing all your comments.